Hi everyone! After the sinking of the giant ship Titanic on April 15, 1912, the ship's captain, John Smith, took full responsibility. This was because investigations proved that the ship was moving at a high speed in foggy weather, ignoring all warnings of icebergs in the ocean. From that day on, the Titanic disappeared into the depths of the ocean for 73 years, until the American oceanographer Robert Ballard came in 1985 and revealed the ship's location at a depth of 4 kilometers in the Atlantic seabed. Ballard presented the results of his study, which proved that the giant ship broke in half while on the surface before it sank. This matter puzzled many experts, knowing that the Titanic had a double hull made of reinforced steel. Withdrawing samples from the ship's steel revealed that it was of poor quality, which made some reconsider many writings published about the Titanic. Welcome, but before we begin, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so that our videos reach you first. One of the interesting facts about the Titanic that many people are unaware of is that the White Star Line, the ship's owner, had contracted with the Harland and Wolff shipyard to build 3 giant ships for operation and use in crossing the ocean. This means that the Titanic was one of 3 twins owned by the company, with some minor differences that experts could distinguish. The first ship that was produced and sailed in the ocean was the Olympic, which began its voyages on October 10, 1910, almost a year and a half before the Titanic's launch. However, about a year later, on September 20, 1911, the captain of the Olympic made a mistake that led to its collision with the British warship HMS Hawke. The surprise is that the captain who caused this accident was the same Captain Edward John Smith, the captain of the Titanic later on. After this accident, a series of investigations began, proving the Olympic's fault and holding the producing company responsible for most of the costs. These decisions caused huge losses for the White Star Line, and of course this led to major disputes with insurance companies. The conspiracy theory on this matter suggests that the company replaced the Titanic with the Olympic in order to sink it again in a way that would allow them to benefit from the insurance compensation. The proponents of this theory say that this plan was approved by senior officials in the company, including the millionaire John Morgan, the main financier of the company. Despite the utmost secrecy surrounding the matter and the threats of job loss for employees who leaked any information, some information did leak out here and there and began to spread. Eventually, this information reached the British engineer and writer Robin Gardner, who authored a series of books, most famously Titanic, the Ship That Never Sank. Through these books, Gardner presented many challenges and raised many doubts that support the possibility of the ship actually being switched with the Olympic. Among the evidence Gardner presented was the cancellation of reservations by 50 senior officials who had confirmed bookings on the ship. He added that the entire disaster was the result of an insurance fraud operation, and the goal was not to kill people, but it was expected that the ship would be sunk and the insurance money would be obtained after rescuing the people via the small boats that were supposed to transport the passengers to the surface of another ship. The Mummy of Bad Luck is a pharaonic mummy displayed in the British Museum since 1889. The story of this mummy tells of a pharaonic princess who was the only daughter of her father, the king of the land. A few days before her wedding to a prince from outside Egyptian lands, the princess died after an accident. Her father, the king, ordered the design of the best coffin and the best embalming. Over the years, 2 English archaeologists discovered the tomb and the mummy. They took the mummy with them to study it further in their work in England, but they subsequently suffered an accident, and both died. Their families donated the mummy to the British Museum. On the Titanic's voyage, among the passengers, was the British investigative journalism pioneer William Stead, one of the victims who died during the disaster. When some survivors were questioned about the causes of the accident, some claimed that William Stead used to talk in his sessions about the cursed mummy and said that it had caused many accidents in the British Museum, which led the museum's management to get rid of it and send it to a museum in New York. He confirmed that the mummy was being transported on the ship and always joked with people saying, "I am afraid of the surprises of the Mummy of Bad Luck." This is the talk that caused the spread of the theory that the sinking of the Titanic was due to the curse of the pharaohs. Another famous theory is the one that claims that the accident was a result of the sectarian conflict between Catholics and Protestants. At that time, sectarian conflicts were raging in Europe between the two denominations. The theory relied on a famous incident that occurred in 1886 in Ireland, specifically at the Harland and Wolff shipyard. In this incident, most of the Protestant employees of the company attacked their Catholic colleagues, which, with the beginning of the 20th century, led to a decrease in the number of Catholic employees in the company until they completely disappeared. The conspiracy theory on this matter says that a group of Catholics, especially third-class passengers on the Titanic, discovered that the ship's hull number was written in a way that indicated a rejection of the Pope in Rome. Many members of the group considered this an omen. Accordingly, some individuals became enthusiastic and started fires and loosened screws from the ship's hull. Strangely, this theory had a strong supporter, the American lawyer and historian John Walter Lord. He confirmed the validity of this claim in his book about the Titanic, titled A Night to Remember. In his book, Lord presented a picture of the ship's number and the way it was written in reverse, which suggests to the reader that it was written, "No Pope." The newspaper. The widely circulated and well-known American newspaper, The Washington Post, published a theory directly accusing John Morgan, the main financier of the ship, stating that he orchestrated the Titanic disaster to eliminate some rivals. The article was titled, "Was John Morgan Anti-Semitic?" To understand this conspiracy theory, we need to grasp a few things. John Morgan was described as the greatest banker in America, and he had a collaborative yet competitive relationship with the renowned Rothschild banking family. The Rothschild family is an old and established Jewish family in the financial market. Morgan's goal was to create an alternative economy by establishing an American Federal Reserve Bank, but he faced growing opposition from his partners, particularly Jacob Astor, Isidor Straus, and Benjamin Guggenheim. Morgan considered these magnates to be strengthening the hand of the Jewish bank. According to the newspaper's analysis, John Morgan was looking more towards America's interest, or perhaps he was influenced by the anti-Semitic ideas that were beginning to be promoted in Europe at the time. Some who read the news mentioned in the article assumed that John Morgan decided to get rid of his partners to weaken the Rothschild family. What supports this from their perspective is that Morgan apologized for the trip at the last moment, claiming he was slightly ill, which was later denied, and it was confirmed that Morgan purchased some furniture for his art collection on the same day. The British newspaper, the Daily Mail, also had its share of conspiracy theories. Veteran Irish investigative journalist Sainon Maloney studied the Titanic disaster for 30 years and ultimately concluded that a fire broke out in the final moments before the Titanic's departure. He even identified the location of the fire as hold number 6. He stated that the arrangements made for the ship's departure could not have been canceled at the last minute, especially given the media frenzy surrounding the launch. Therefore, from his perspective, the crew decided to control the fire and not disrupt the entire voyage. However, during the voyage, specifically on the third day of sailing, the fire reignited. After assessing the situation, the captain and the chief engineer decided that the best solution to avoid panic and scandal on the ship was to try to control the fire and increase the ship's speed to the maximum to reach port quickly and address the situation. But what happened was that with this high speed during the cold night and pitch darkness, the problem occurred, and the ship collided with an iceberg, which was enough to create a crack in the ship's hull, which was already weakened by the fire. Naturally, water rushed into the ship quickly and it sank. Maloney's theory is considered the most accepted theory by some experts. However, other experts say that ship fires and coal combustion were a recurring occurrence on various voyages and were considered a normal incident that was controlled without problems. That's it. We're done. Whoever made it this far, you are the best people. Please give us a like before you leave so we know how many people reached the end. And don't forget, if you have a suggestion for an episode, write it to us in the comments. Goodbye.